All through history, there have been queens who did more than just wear a crown. They led, they fought, they made big decisions, and they left their mark on the world. These women didn't just rule, they became legends. But what makes a queen legendary? It's not just being born into royalty, it's about what they did with their power. Some led armies into battle, others made smart political moves, some changed their countries for the better. A few became famous not just for what they did, but for the stories told about them after they were gone. In this video, we're going to talk about 8 legendary queens from different times and places. From ancient Egypt to medieval Britain, from Africa to Asia. They all had different stories, but they have one thing in common. They stood out in a world mostly run by men. So if you're ready to hear about queens who broke the rules, stood up to empires, and made history, let's get started. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. 1. Queen Hatshepsut. Queen Hatshepsut was one of the first women in history to rule a major empire, ancient Egypt. She became pharaoh around 1479 BCE, which was a big deal because Egypt was used to being ruled by men. But Hatshepsut didn't just take the title, she owned it. She dressed like a male pharaoh, even wearing the traditional beard, and made sure everyone knew she was in charge. Her path to power wasn't simple. Hatshepsut was originally the queen, married to Pharaoh Thutmose II. When he died, his son, from another wife, was too young to rule, so Hatshepsut stepped in as a regent, someone who rules until the real king is old enough. But over time, she stopped acting like a placeholder and began ruling as the main pharaoh herself. Hatshepsut focused on peace and building things, not war. She launched major construction projects across Egypt, including her famous temple at Deir el-Bahri, which still stands today. She also opened trade routes, like the famous expedition to the land of Punt, which brought back gold, incense, and exotic animals. For a long time, people tried to erase her from history. After her death, later rulers removed her name from monuments and tried to wipe out her legacy. But archaeologists eventually uncovered her story, and now she's remembered as one of the greatest rulers of ancient Egypt, male or female. Hatshepsut proved that a woman could lead a powerful empire and do it well. She didn't just keep things running, she helped Egypt grow, build, and thrive. 2. Cleopatra VII. When most people hear the name Cleopatra, they think of beauty, drama, and romance. But Cleopatra VII, the last ruler of ancient Egypt, was much more than that. She was smart, politically skilled, and determined to protect her kingdom during a very dangerous time. Cleopatra became queen at just 18 years old and ruled for over 2 decades. Egypt was no longer the great power it once was, and Rome was growing stronger every day. Cleopatra knew that the only way to survive was to form smart alliances. And that's exactly what she did. She first partnered with Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome at the time. Their relationship helped her regain her throne after being pushed out by her brother. Later, she formed an even closer bond with another Roman leader, Mark Antony. Together, they tried to hold off the growing power of Caesar's rival, Octavian, who later became Emperor Augustus. Cleopatra wasn't just involved in love affairs. She spoke several languages, knew how to run a government, and worked hard to keep Egypt independent. But in the end, Rome won. After Antony was defeated, Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms, most likely by snakebite, though some historians question the details. Over time, her story turned into legend. Writers and filmmakers focused on the romance, but behind all that was a powerful woman doing everything she could to protect her people and her throne. Cleopatra wasn't just the last pharaoh of Egypt, she was one of the most famous and misunderstood women in history. Her story is still told over 2,000 years later, and for good reason. 3. Boudica Boudica was a warrior queen who led one of the most famous uprisings in British history. She lived in the 1st century CE and ruled the Iceni tribe in what is now eastern England. At that time, the Romans had taken control of much of Britain and were trying to force their rule over local tribes. When Boudica's husband, the king of the Iceni, died, He hoped to pass his land to both his daughters and the Roman Empire to keep the peace. But the Romans ignored his wishes. They took the land, beat Boudica, and attacked her daughters. That was the final straw. In response, Boudica raised an army and led a full-scale rebellion. Her forces destroyed several Roman towns, including modern-day Colchester, London, and St. Albans. For a while, it looked like she might actually drive the Romans out of Britain. But the Romans regrouped. They were better trained and better armed. In a massive battle, Boudica's army was crushed. According to some sources, she took poison rather than be captured. Even though she lost, Boudica became a symbol of courage and resistance. Her story was told for centuries, and in modern times, she's seen as a national hero in Britain. Statues of her stand near the British Parliament, reminding people of her bravery. Boudica didn't fight for fame or power. She fought for justice, for her daughters, and for her people. That's what makes her legendary. Fourth Empress Wu Zetian is the only woman in China's long history to rule as emperor in her own name. She lived over 1,300 years ago during the Tang Dynasty, and her rise to power is one of the most dramatic stories in Chinese history. Wu started out as a low-ranking concubine in the emperor's court, but she was clever, ambitious, and knew how to play court politics. After the emperor died, she didn't just fade into the background. Instead, she worked her way back into power by becoming the wife of the next emperor, and then the real power behind the throne. Eventually, Wu declared herself emperor, not empress, and started her own dynasty, the Zhou dynasty. She ruled from 690 to 705 CE. Many people in her time thought it was wrong for a woman to have that much power, but Wu didn't let that stop her. As ruler, she made real changes. She supported education, improved the government, and gave more power to people who earned it, not just those born into it. She also expanded the empire and made sure her officials were loyal to her, sometimes by harsh means. Historians have mixed views of Wu Zetian. Some say she was cruel and manipulative. Others see her as strong, smart, and fair. What's clear is that she broke every rule for women of her time, and succeeded. Wu Zetian proved that a woman could be just as powerful, effective, and feared as any man. In a world that told her no, she made history by saying yes to herself. 5. Queen Isabella I of Castile. Queen Isabella I of Castile played a huge role in shaping modern Spain, and even the world. She ruled in the late 1400s, a time of major change in Europe. Alongside her husband, King Ferdinand of Aragon, she helped unite Spain into one powerful kingdom. One of Isabella's biggest achievements was finishing the Reconquista, a long struggle to take back Spanish lands from Muslim rulers. In 1492, her forces captured Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain. That same year, she supported a bold explorer named Christopher Columbus. Her funding helped him sail west and discover the Americas, a move that changed global history forever. Isabella was deeply religious and wanted to create a strong Catholic Spain. This led to one of the most controversial parts of her rule, the Spanish Inquisition. This campaign forced Jews and Muslims to convert to Christianity or leave the country. It caused a lot of pain and suffering, and historians still debate its impact. Even with that dark chapter, Isabella is remembered as one of Europe's most powerful queens. She was smart, determined, and deeply involved in politics. Unlike many women of her time, she ruled as an equal partner to her husband and even controlled her own army and treasury. Isabella helped launch the Age of Exploration and shaped the future of Europe and the Americas. Love her or hate her, her choices changed the world. 6. Queen Nzinga. Queen Nzinga was a powerful and fearless leader from Central Africa in the 1600s. She ruled over the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba in what is now Angola. At a time when European powers were trying to take African land and enslave its people, Nzinga stood up and fought back. The Portuguese were expanding their control in Africa and wanted to take over Nzinga's territory. When she first met with them to negotiate peace, they tried to disrespect her by not offering a chair. Nzinga didn't back down. She ordered one of her servants to get on all fours so she could sit proudly at their level. That moment has become legendary. Nzinga used both diplomacy and war to protect her people. She formed alliances with other African kingdoms and even worked with the Dutch to fight the Portuguese. She was a skilled military leader who often led her troops in battle. She also took bold steps, like freeing enslaved people and giving land to those who supported her. She ruled for nearly 40 years, always fighting to keep her kingdom free. Even in her later years, she never gave up. After she died, the Portuguese finally took over, but her legacy lived on. Today, Queen Nzinga is remembered as a symbol of African resistance. She showed that women could be strong leaders and that standing up to injustice is always worth the fight. 7. Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria ruled the United Kingdom for over 63 years, from 1837 to 1901, and her time on the throne is now known as the Victorian era. It was a time of huge change, growth, and power for Britain. During her reign, the British Empire became the largest in the world. When Victoria became queen at just 18, few people expected much from her, but she surprised everyone. She took her role seriously and became a symbol of stability and tradition. She didn't run the government herself, but her opinions mattered, and politicians often listened to her. Victoria was queen during the Industrial Revolution, when factories, railways, and new inventions changed everyday life. She also ruled during Britain's colonial expansion, when the empire spread across Africa, Asia, and beyond. That brought wealth to Britain, but also caused suffering in many colonized countries, something historians talk about more today. She married Prince Albert, and together they had 9 children. Their strong family life became a model for many people, and Victoria mourned him deeply after his death. She wore black for the rest of her life and became known for her serious image. By the time she died, Britain had become a global superpower, and she was one of the most famous people in the world. Even today, places, buildings, and traditions still carry her name. Queen Victoria didn't lead armies or fight battles, but her reign helped shape the modern world. 8. Grace O'Malley. Grace O'Malley, also known as the Pirate Queen of Ireland, was a fearless leader and sea captain in the 1500s. She wasn't a queen in the traditional sense, but she ruled over land and sea in her own way, and she wasn't afraid to stand up to the powerful English crown. Grace was born into a noble Irish family that controlled parts of Western Ireland. Instead of staying at home, she took to the sea. She became the head of her clan after her father's death and commanded a fleet of ships. She traded, raided, and defended her land from enemies, both Irish and English. The English didn't like her power. They tried to stop her, even taking her sons and brother as prisoners. But Grace didn't give up. In one of the most famous moments of her life, she sailed to England and met Queen Elizabeth I face to face. She asked for her family's release, and surprisingly, Elizabeth agreed. Grace lived to an old age and remained a strong leader. Over time, her story became part history, part legend. Some say she was a pirate, others say she was a freedom fighter. Either way, Grace O'Malley broke the rules of her time and lived life on her own terms. And that's what makes her legendary. These 8 queens came from different parts of the world and lived in very different times. But they all had something in common: strength, leadership, and the courage to stand up for what they believed in. Some ruled with power, others with wisdom. Some are remembered for their bravery in battle, others for their smart decisions. They broke the rules, made history, and proved that leadership isn't about gender, it's about action. Their stories still inspire us today. Thanks for watching 8 Legendary Queens in History Explained. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history stories.